Now here's an unexpected and actually fairly short video. This set is one that I wasn't really planning to do much with, but I was doing a video on a classic sort of Bush radio, which will come out about the end of next month, I think so it's the end of November. But while I was looking at that and getting the radio out of storage, I noticed this little Bush TR90 here. Now, I'd fiddled around with this a bit when I first got it and sort of lost interest in it because I thought it's a bit of a boring radio, really. And I was having some difficulty making a sort of initial diagnosis, which I sometimes do before doing these videos. I know we like to maintain the idea that everything starts out with a surprise, and sometimes it does, but not always. I'm not going to lie to you. Or maybe I already have. This is a TR90, always a Bush transistor radio, very much in a car radio form factor. Quite a nice little case with this nice little fabric covering around it, and also a little, what's that, sort of resin-like Bush logo there. Bright red tuning scale. It's got a bit of, it's gone a bit funny, unfortunately, so not in original condition. Although the rest of it isn't too bad. Handle's gone missing. But yes, it certainly looks as if it was made for using in cars, at least partially, given the way it looks. And also, although given that the speaker's on this side, although there is a speaker vent on the back of it, I think for an external speaker, this sort of thing of having your radio in your car, we've covered it before. There is an external aerial socket as well, which is at the back here. It was fairly popular in the mid to late 60s. There used to be a radio license originally to pay for the BBC, because that was the only broadcaster. And then when television came along, we had a television license, which we still have in this country. You have to have a TV license. And although it pays for the BBC, it's only used to pay for the BBC. You have to have it if you watch any live television at all, even if you watched it on Sky or anything like that, although they don't get any money from it. Now, when the TV license came along, they said, well, you don't need a radio license if you've got a TV license. So most people didn't have a radio license anymore. But there were some people in the 60s who didn't have tellies. There weren't many people by the end of the 60s. Most people by then had got a TV set. But there was another thing which you needed a radio license for, and that was if you had a radio plumbed into your car. So like a proper car radio, which was in the dashboard, you had to have an additional license for that, even though you paid for your TV license. However, if you took your home radio and used it in your car, then you didn't have to have that license. So that's why a lot of these sets we look at from the 60s have this option as if it's designed to be used in a car. If you think back to the Hacker Autocrat we looked at before, for example. In 1971, the radio license was abolished completely, and you didn't need an extra license for your radio set in your car. So it became less of a luxury and more an expected standard fitment in cars after that point. Now, I do remember in the early 1970s in the good old county borough of Dewsbury, well, it was good and old then anyway, there was a guy who used to drive a taxi, and he had a great big Fidelity radio strapped to his dashboard. And I always wondered why that was. Why didn't you just put a Motorola in the little space allocated for it? But perhaps that was because he wanted to save a bit of money on the radio license and wasn't aware that the law had changed. Anyway, we'll have a look in this. It's already fixed, but the problem that occurred was one that I've not seen before in this sort of set. So I'll take it apart and show you what's inside. So this big screw in the top comes off, and then it just splits into two pieces, and you can see pretty much everything here. It's a bit old school, and we'll look at that with the other Bush radios as well, but it doesn't have a printed circuit board. It's like point-to-point wiring. Everything's on tags on the board. Even the transistors are on tags and things like that. Here's some of the transistors. There's another one. Used a PP7 originally, which is a battery that you can't get anymore, so I put a PP3 holder in here. It had PP9 clips, but a PP9 won't go in that hole. And quite compact, really, given that type of construction. But also, I think it'd be fun when we take the thing apart, you'll see it's a bit less neat on the other side. Now, to take it apart, there's what looks like a screw here. It's actually a hex bolt as well. And then there's two 4BA nuts that you take off here and here, and that will pull the thing out. So let's do that. nuts always fall off into it when I do this, but I'll just pull that away. Ah, sorry, I forgot to take the knobs off the front, didn't I? It doesn't work if you don't do that first. Right, now it should come out. Oh, we got one of the nuts back. I'm not sure about the other one. There it is. Right, so we caught all the bits. There's the other side of the chassis, and again you can see it's all point-to-point wired there. Short answer, it wasn't making much sound at all. I did manage to find RF when I probed around it with my signal tracer, but I couldn't get much out of the audio. I replaced the electrolytic caps and one or two others. There's a lot of these Hunt capacitors as well, which probably I should replace, but it's such a fiddly thing getting to them, and the thing generally sounds okay now. But one of the problems I was having was that the signal was stopping at this transformer here, which is the final IF transformer. You can just see that's the underside of that can there, and you can see it where this capacitor is, which is pin 6. So look at that on the diagram. When you look to pin 5, which is where it's supposed to come out, there was absolutely nothing. And I thought maybe it was something like you had an open circuit coil or something like that. But in fact, the rectifier diode, the actual detector diode, was faulty. Now, in fact, what makes this potentially worse is, as you can see here, the diode is not a separate component, but it's actually included in that transformer can, and I didn't really want to have to try and pull that apart, and there's no chance of getting another one. Fortunately, because it failed open circuit rather than short circuit, I was just able to pop another diode across those two pins and it started working. So that was it really. I've never seen that signal diode fail in any other transistor radio, and there's not really any stress at that point. It's not any high voltage, so usually they last forever. So that's something new for me anyway. The other thing you have to be careful about when putting this thing back together, and I got caught by this, and it took me ages to work out what the problem was. So I took the speaker out to try and facilitate working on it. When you put the speaker back, there's a little locating point there, and I just missed that, and it wasn't quite in. Now that wouldn't normally have mattered because the speaker would still work, but the clearance between the metal of the speaker and the brackets here holding it in and this board is so tight that if you get that even like a couple of millimeters high, then these things short out. When you put it back in, you get all sorts of shorts onto the board, and it stops working again after a few minutes. And this is driving me up the wall for quite a while. And even with this cover over it, which is obviously for that reason, even the cover doesn't completely stop the problem, because you've still got a bit of exposed metalwork here of the fixing plates. I'll put it back together, and assuming it still works and I haven't broken anything else by just doing this demo, and we'll have a listen to it.
Stopped him getting up and over, but is it cute? Is it a little bit bending the rules? Yeah. A little bit of contact, you just make sure he gets it.
The dark arts.
Yeah,
we say that all the time, don't we?
That was a dark art.
You call it dark arts, I call it cheating, mate, but there you go.
That guitar, intercept, brilliant touch from Bowen, lot to do here. Mazraoui breathing down his neck, does well to hold on to the ball for West Ham.
West Ham United 0, Manchester United 0, but Diogo Dalot has missed a golden opportunity. Wrong day, Ibsen Hearts in the Scottish Premier League drew 1-1.
All we really have on the radio at the moment is sports, isn't it? Radio 5 Live is doing football, and so is Talk Sport, but that's what you get on a Sunday afternoon. Let's see if we can get something from Radio 4 long wave, shall we?
For quite a long time this summer, and so I think that would be my number one for sort of formalish box ball flowering evergreen thing. How does all that find, Nathan?
Sounds great.
Good, best of luck. We have our next question, please.
Good afternoon. I'm Steve Watson from Edgbaston Guinea Gardens, and the school next door to the Botanical Gardens run an after-school club, gardening club, for years.
Oh, gardener's question time. So you can do football or gardening at the moment on AM radio in this country.
And what you do if you don't like duck? Well, if you don't like duck, you're rather stuck.
So there's the Bush TR90. As I said, it was something that I wasn't going to pay any attention to, mainly because I didn't see much value in it. But I thought we might as well get a few minutes of video on it, as I'd surprisingly managed to fix it.